Hey YouTube, what's going on? Snowflarkyzemos here today with another deck profile. This is an update to my Barrel Dragon Dark Machine deck profile. Barrel Dragon is just an iconic dual monsters era monster that I love so much. I really love the chance effects in Yu-Gi-Oh! So dice roll and coin flip cards. So Barrel Dragon was always a natural draw, and very much love that they gave this card more support a couple years ago. Always been fun to play. So let's get coin flipping and take to the deck profile. Starting off with our monsters, I am playing 3 copies of Desperado Barrel Dragon. Desperado Barrel Dragon is an incredible boss monster for this deck. It's got 2800 attack, and if a face-up Dark Machine monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. So that's pretty nice. Definitely lots of destruction going on, so that will work. Once per turn, during the battle phase, quick effect, you can toss a coin 3 times and destroy face-up monsters on the field up to the number of heads that you flip. And if you flip 3 heads, you get to draw a card too. So that makes it pretty awesome, of course. That can do a lot of board wiping. Now, of course, when you use that effect, Desperado Barrel Dragon can attack. And one last effect for Desperado Barrel Dragon is that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a level 7 or lower monster that has an effect that involves tossing a coin flip from the deck to your hand. So this just makes a great boss monster for the deck. Lots of attack, lots of the ways to wipe off monsters from the board. Summons itself very easily. So a natural 3 of, because we'll definitely go through it. Next up, I'm playing 1 copy of Barrel Dragon. Barrel Dragon, of course, being the OG monster from this series. It's a 7-star with 2600 attack. You toss a coin 3 times, and if you do, you get to destroy a monster on the field. If you get 2 out of 3 heads, I mean. So pretty good monster. You know, not too useful, but there's definitely ways that we can cheat it out of our hand, and fusion deployment makes this able to be summoned out the deck. So we're just playing 1 copy because any more than that can be kind of a brick. We don't want to see too many, but Barrel Dragon is a good one of. Next up for monsters, I am playing 1 copy of Blowback Dragon. Blowback Dragon's got a little less attack than Barrel Dragon, but he's 6 stars, so if you have to tribute 1 monster, that's not as bad. And Blowback's effect is a little bit better because when you can destroy any card on the field if you get 2 out of 3 heads on his coin flip. Again, another card that we can fusion deployment right out of the deck thanks to Gatling Dragon, mentioning Barrel Dragon and Blowback's Dragon's name. So worth running 1 copy of, but of course too many of these would also be a brick. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Twin Barrel Dragon. Oh, I love the super rare version of this card so much. But Twin Barrel Dragon is a 4-star monster with 1700 attack that says when this card is summoned, you can target a card on the field, toss a coin twice, and if both results are head, destroy it. So you don't get that destruction effect too often because of the odds, unless you get Proton Blast in the grave. But it's just a good monster to summon because we can freely normal summon it. A Dark Machine has synergies with Heavy Metal Raiders in the deck. We can search it off of Desperado Barrel Dragon. Just a number of things, and the way this deck is designed is that we have a little resource loop that is going to love getting this guy back into our hand continuously so that we can trigger his effect multiple times. And that makes him a pretty cool card. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of BM4 Blast Spider. This is definitely a retrain of the Launcher Spider card. It's got 1400 attack, 2200 defense. Dark Machine makes it synergize well with the deck. And of course, once per turn, you can target a Dark Machine monster you control and a face-up card your opponent controls and destroy them. That's very nice. This can trigger our Heavy Metal Raiders field spell and whatnot and just be a kind of dark, exile force type removal. And then, of course, if the monster we destroyed was a Dark Machine monster and it destroys an opponent's monster by battle or card effect and is sent to the graveyard, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the original attack of one of those monsters destroyed that was sent to the graveyard. So that's pretty neat. You can. This is a good way to get rid of spent Twin Barrel Dragons, which we want to do anyway, so that we can get it back to our hand and reuse it again. And just makes a neat card. 2200 defense is a good body, but not too useful. We only want to see 2 of it. We don't want to see 2 more, but pretty good to have. And last for the monsters, I am playing one copy of Fusilier Dragon, the Dual Mode Beast. Another favorite card of mine. I'm considering maybe subbing this out for another Blowback or Barrel Dragon, given that this version is not running Skill Drain like my other version, my previous version did. But Fusilier Dragon is a 2800 attack monster, which is nice if we summon it out of the hand with Heavy Metal Raiders. It makes it 2800 attack. But also, if this card's stuck in our hand, it's not that big a deal because this card can be normal summoned or set without tributing, and if it does, its attack and defense becomes half. So it's 1400, but that's okay. Heavy Metal Raiders can boost its attack back up, and so just a good one card to have handy so that we can summon it if we need a monster on board, or if it's in our hand and we can summon it off of Heavy Metal Raiders, we get a really large attack monster. Just that flexibility still makes me warrant playing it at one slot. And that is it for the monsters. Next, we are going into our spells. I am playing two copies of Heavy Metal Raiders. Heavy Metal Raiders, of course, being the field spell of this deck. The first time a Dark Machine monster you control would be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not destroyed, and if you took battle damage from the battle, it gains attack equal to the damage we took. So that's nice. That makes a lot of our lower attack monsters like Twin Barrel Dragon, Fusilier, Summon Without Tribute, BM4 Blast Spider get more attack and protects them from being destroyed by battle, which is pretty sweet. And then, of course, once per turn, if a monster you control that was originally a Dark Machine monster destroys a card on the field by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Dark Machine monster from your hand. So that's pretty nice. That can get Fusilier, that can get Blowback, Barrel Dragon out of the hand, just as long as we destroy a monster. And the fact that it's by card effect or battle gives it a lot of flexibility. Definitely works with Desperado Barrel Dragon pretty well. So just a good card to have. 3 is a bit too many because it's useful, but it's not great, and it can clog up a little bit. Next up, I'm playing 2 copies of Machina Defense Perimeter. This card is the one I really love in this deck. Machina Defense Perimeter is pretty cool. While you control a level 7 or higher machine monster, so that includes Barrel Dragon and Desperado, your opponent's monsters cannot target level 6 or lower machine monsters you control for attacks, and also your opponent cannot target them with card effects. So that's pretty handy, but the real good effect of this card is that if a face-up machine monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target a machine monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. So this is nice because this means our low monster count is not as punishing because we can constantly loop resources. What's nice about this is that we can realistically continually loop 2 monsters in our deck, Twin Barrel Dragon and Desperado Barrel Dragon, because when Desperado Barrel Dragon goes to the grave, it'll switch Twin Barrel Dragon, and of course then when Twin Barrel Dragon is summoned and destroyed, Machina Defense Perimeter will activate, allowing us to add Desperado Barrel Dragon to our hand. That means we can summon Desperado Barrel Dragon again later when Dark Machine Monster is destroyed, summoning on the field, and when it gets destroyed, we can put Twin Barrel Dragon back in our hand, summon it, and continually loop those cards. It just makes it very handy for us to not run out of monsters and makes things like Twin Barrel a little more resilient. So just a pretty good card to have. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Fusion Deployment. Fusion Deployment was an awesome card to get released to add to this deck. It just states that we can reveal a fusion monster in our extra deck and special summon from our hand or deck one of the fusion materials whose name is listed on that card. So luckily we have a Fusion Gatling Dragon that both lists Barrel Dragon or Blowback Dragon, so we can use this card to just pull one of them right out of the deck, which is pretty awesome. And of course, now we can't special summon any other monsters from our extra deck except fusion monsters the turn we use this card, but that's alright. This build, we actually are not using our extra deck much at all. We're basically only using it for Pot of Extravagance and having Gatling Dragon to fusion deploy out, Blowback or Barrel. So just a good card. We played at 3 because we want to see it. Next up, I'm playing a copy of Foolish Barrel Goods. This is in here because this card drops a spell or trap from our deck to the graveyard, and we have a trap card, Proton Blast, that is very handy to have in the graveyard for its effect, so I'm mostly just in here to dump a copy of Proton Blast. And last for spells, I am playing 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Like I said, this deck, this build, we're not comboing off and making a big extra deck board, so it's better to just use our extra deck to get us extra cards. We banish 6 of those to draw a card. One thing to note about this is we can't use any other draw effects, so you're not going to be able to get that draw off of Desperado Barrel Dragon if you flip the 3 heads, but that's okay. Usually worth it. Just a good card to have, and we'll play it. That's it for spells. All right, next we're going into our trap cards. I am playing 2 copies of Proton Blast. Proton Blast says once per turn, if an activated card effect tosses coins, immediately after it resolves, apply the following effect based on the number of heads. If it's 1 heads, we can inflict 500 damage to our opponent. If it's 2 or more heads, destroy a card your opponent controls. And if it's 3 or more heads, look at your opponent's hand and discard 1 card from their hand. So the nice thing about this card is those effects stack. So if we get 3 heads, we're getting all 3 of those effects. 500 life point damage burn, destroying a card, and ripping a card out of their hand, which is pretty sweet. And then, of course, when this card is in your graveyard and a card effect is activated that involves tossing multiple coins, you can banish this card from your graveyard to treat all the results as heads. So that's pretty nice, especially if we have a Proton Blast on board, and then we can banish a Proton Blast from our grave. Get something like Desperado or Barrel Dragon Blowback, guaranteed all 3 heads. Get a lot of card effects triggering off, so just a neat card. I like it at 2. 3 is a bit too cloggy, but 2 gives us 1 to mill and 1 to sit on the field. Very much like that. Next up, I am playing 3 copies of Summon Limit. One of the main win cons of this deck, we're not comboing off, so we need this card to stop our opponent from comboing off. Summon Limit just says that neither player can summon more than 2 times per turn. There's not too many instances where we're going to be summoning more than twice per turn, and being able to slow down our opponent to having to play at our speed is going to make this deck a whole lot more powerful. Because it definitely means we can usually handle everything they're stuck with, and they can't go into enough combo pieces to out things reliably. So Summon Limit is very good. Definitely want to see this card. I'm also playing 3 copies of Gozen Match. Everything we're playing is a dark machine, so Gozen Match is very handy because each player can only control 1 attribute of monster, and they must send all others to the grave. Not going to punish us because we're dark, but combo decks, they like to build a lot of extra deck monsters that have a variety of attributes, so Gozen Match can just hose certain matchups. Not all matchups get hosed by this, so if you need, you could switch to Rivalry of the Warlords, because everything we play is machine, and that's the one for types, but it's a good option to have. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. This is mostly in here so that we can protect our floodgates, our Summon Limit or Gozen Match. If our opponent plays a spell or trap or summons a monster, we can pay half our life points to negate it. Use it to protect Summon Limit. Summon Limit or Gozen Match is probably what's really winning you the game, so we want to protect that. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Torrential Tribute. Torrential Tribute works pretty well in this deck because for both Desperado Barrel Dragon and, of course, Machina Defense Perimeter, all that needs to happen is that our monsters need to be destroyed by battle or card effect. It doesn't require it to be our opponents, so we can play Torrential Tribute to both disrupt our opponent, and, of course, we don't even really lose out because if we have Machina Defense Perimeter set up, we can just add the guy we destroy back to our hand, add another card back to our hand. It is pretty good stuff, so just worthwhile, and of course Torrential Tribute naturally combos incredibly well with Summon Limit because we can just chain Summon Limit after Torrential Tribute if our opponents summon 2 monsters, leave their board open. Very handy. Next up, I'm playing 3 copies of Evenly Matched. Evenly Matched is just in here because if I have to go second, and sometimes you want to go second, sometimes it's tempting to go second since our card effects are normally so responsive to our opponent having cards online, things like Twin Barrel Dragon, Blowback destroying cards. So Evenly is just a card I can have here so that if our opponent is set up on turn 1 and I can get into Evenly Matched, I can put them in a bit of a tough spot. Basically, at the end of the battle phase, if your opponent controls more cards than you do, you make your opponent banish cards from their field face down until they only control the same amount of cards. So if you have an empty board and just play Evenly Matched, they're just going to have 1 card left. Everything else gets banished face down. And of course, the greatest part about this card is if you control no cards, you can activate this card from your hand. So that's pretty nice. Go second, just skip to battle phase. Play Evenly Matched. Sometimes it works. This is a casual deck environment too, so not as many negates to have to battle through. Still some, but not as many. So just a good option. It's worth considering having a going second package in here. And next, I am playing 2 copies of Heavy Storm Duster. This is just a pick for my duel group, my matchup, but there's lots of back row decks, Trap, Tricks, Labyrinth. Heavy Storm Duster is just a trap card that says target up to 2 spells and traps and destroy it in exchange for a battle phase. So I like that ability to gain card advantage off of destroying multiple spell and trap cards. And of course, we're usually playing it during our opponent's turn, so we're not even worried about losing the battle phase. Pretty good card. Trap cards can always be swapped around, shuffled around, so that you pick what you need to combat what you're going to be up against. And that is it for the main deck. Going into the extra deck, I only have one card we're really going to talk about here, and that is Gatling Dragon, a card that I'll be playing 3 copies of. Gatling Dragon, of course, is a fusion between Barrel Dragon and Blowback Dragon that has an effect that says toss 3 coins and destroy monsters on the field equal to the number of heads. This effect can only be used once per turn during your main phase. So, Gatling Dragon, you can destroy a lot of monsters with this card. The thing about Gatling Dragon to note is that the destruction is mandatory, so you have to destroy that many monsters, including your own. Something to keep in mind. Of course, in this build, as you'll see, there's no way we're actually summoning out Gatling Dragon. You could play cards like Overload Fusion and Necro Fusion as a way to get him out, but I don't know, I found it kind of unreliable, so he's mostly just in here so that we can have the name Barrel Dragon and Blowback Dragon to pull those cards out of the deck with Fusion deployment. And definitely max out on this card at 3 so that you always have one left after playing a Pot of Extravagance so that you can use Fusion deployment. As far as the rest of the extra deck goes, I'm basically only just play some level 4 XZ's monsters in case I get Twin Barrel and BM4 Blast Spider on the field. But it's not really a combo deck. It's more of a stun deck, so you don't really have too many options of going into the extra deck. So that is it for my Barrel Dragon deck profile. Very cool to have all the support for the Bandit Keith Classic. I love pulling out the coins and flipping the coins, and it's very funny to have a Twin Barrel Dragon hit. Just stuff like that makes it a very fun deck to play, and very much like having it. Definitely one of my favorite Duel Monsters era monsters. Let me know what you think, though. I appreciate y'all checking out the deck profile. Love to hear what you've been doing with Barrel Dragon or any cards like that. And maybe what your favorite coin flip card is. I really liked a Bear Ushi Oni as a kid as well. But thanks for checking out the deck profile. I'll catch you all in the next one.